Hi, everybody. Welcome to an episode of Coaching While Black, a podcast brought to you by the Center for Healing and Justice Through Sport. I am one of your hosts, Armond Richards, along with
Chris Reed,
Anthony Andino.
And we are here with a very dear friend of ours and guest,
Claire Perry. Yes,
Claire Perry,
me.
everybody.
Yes.
And we're here to talk about parents, the ups and downs, the highs, the lows. What is it like? To start with Claire.
What is it like to be
a parent with a kid in sports? What's the culture like? What's the experience like?
It is being a parent in sports. I'm not prepared for it, to be honest. And that's really hard, particularly given our job, right? I work for CHJS. I feel like y'all are family. And we come in thinking that sports should be this, right? Healing. We know how to make these environments. We know how to tell coaches to be healing, not harmful. And then you're in it. Mm-hmm. It's been a major check on like regulation. It's been a major check on how you show up. And not just like in the moment, but before a game, before a practice. And what's your role? I coach. I have chosen to not coach my kid because I'm dysregulated more often than not. And I'm not happy about it, but I'm like, I need to prioritize what I want then with my kid.
Anytime somebody asks me, are you going to coach your kid? And that's my first thought is, I don't think that's a smart place for me to be.
Agree.
I'll be assistant coach where I can handle a lot of the other kids.
Yes.
And I'll bring the juice and
Yeah.
whatnot. But to me, be in that position, it's just,
Too much.
won't be good for
Something
them.
happens.
Yeah.
Well, because you want to center your relationship. Like I remember coaching Leo, my son, and I was like, something is happening to my brain that I'm treating him differently than every other kid. And like, I'm not a horrible coach. Like I could stay regulated and objective with almost every single kid, no matter how they show up. But as soon as I see my kid's face, I'm like, like everything kind of just heightens, and I hate it, So yeah, it's been fascinating to want to be both a coach and a parent and a mentor. And now I'm just like choosing to be a parent. That's all I can control in this moment. Yeah.
Claire, you brought up parents' role, like you said, knowing your role. And I feel like as somebody who's coached and built programs, every parent wants to be everything to their child and sometimes to others. Yeah. How do you suggest, or what advice could you give coaches on how to create roles for parents that are more conducive to a positive and healing-centered environment when we're talking about sports?
It's hard to control for. And y'all are going to talk about or have talked about like how to build a program. And when thinking about that, it's like, all right, what are the different like spokes to a program? There's the program, there's the community, there's the kids, and then there's the parents. And it's like, when you're building this, what can the parents actually control? And I wonder if that's like, if y'all have opinions on that and what do you think? But for me, we can control the befores and afters. I actually want to trust and not show up to practice because I'm a single parent and I'm like relying on coaches to probably unfairly, but to also like continue the high quality mentorship that I'm exhausted doing 24/7, So I don't want to show up, but I do want to trust that y'all are continuing that. So what can I control is before and after practice, is before and after a game. We've talked about the car rides. As part of a program, as part of the sports experience, there needs to be conversations about dysregulation and regulation and truly the time before and after. We call it informal time. That's the time where we're supposed to be like building relationships, right? With our kids, the players. The same thing goes for parents. How are we regulating ourselves so our kids can show up regulated on the field so that they can actually listen to what the coaches are saying? And I just feel like it's hard, right? Because then you like see your kid like wanting to excel and they love it and they want to score 10 points. And I'm like, yeah, let's go. And what can you control? So that car ride.
I feel like that control thing's big too for a lot of new parents.
Yeah.
In this world that we live in, control over your kid's life is paramount.
Yeah.
And the moment you put them into sports is really the first time in yours and the kid's life where you have eyes and you're in the same space as your kid, but you have zero authority over how their experience is going to go.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of parents have zero experience with that sort of loss of control.
And that causes the dysregulation almost.
Everything we tell them is like, you need to be on top of this. You need to have this under control. Otherwise, your kid's going to go off the rails.
Totally.
And then we say, let go of that control now for 30 minutes, 90 minutes, however long. And you see your kid either upset or celebrating, and you have nothing. You can't do anything until you're like, I'm not going to live by that. And then you do start yelling. And you do start getting involved. So I really feel like, at least as I'm becoming more and more involved in sports as my kids are getting older, like where I do have control, like practicing, I don't know, not having it, which is like
practicing not having control.
Like to what I'm trying to tell a lot of parents, like, control is great and everything, but like it's also too much it's gonna be a detriment.
Well, you've taught me something, many things, not to like minimize how much you've taught me.
And one of them was?
I think about you often because you say for your girls, you try to be as predictable as possible. And I can't. Like, I don't know. Like, so how do you actually show up in a predictable, controlled way for your
question.
kiddos? Thank you.
I sacrifice a lot for that, which could be like...
Yeah, how do you balance it?
When they're in a heightened emotional state, and I know it's not that serious, but they're feeling like it's really serious. What are they going to get from me at the time? And I feel like for me to be a best parent in this moment, I can't get caught up in their hyper emotionality of the moment. So like being predictable means whatever situation we're in, I'm going to need to show up, either hold my emotions or be consistent with the punishments that I give out or even the rewards that I give out. Do I have to brush my teeth tonight? Yes, because A, B, C. Tomorrow, do I have to brush my teeth? Yes, because the same reasons. A, B, and frickin' C.
But I'm not going to say frickin'
the thing about predictability for me is I feel like a lot of us get mad when we have to repeat ourselves. But like that's how the brain learns. It takes repetition. So repeating myself is just, if I want them to learn this thing, repeating myself is the bare minimum. The bare. So I focus on repeating in the same tone, the content, everything needs to be as like, I'm not mad at you for asking me or doing this thing that I asked you not to do because I only told you this last week. Here we go again. Don't do this because blah, blah, blah. We got it? We don't.
Nope. I don't.
But
say it again.
What they're doing in real life is going like this, but in their head they're like,
right. And I feel like that's where a lot of what we learn here helps because I'm like, okay, your brain's not, you're not locked in right now. Or just because you're drifting off right now doesn't mean you're not processing what I'm saying.
Maybe.
I daydream a lot. When my partner is speaking with me, I have a tendency to,
trust,
I get what you've said. Let me start processing this in my way, which is, personally, I run through like some cinematic stuff in my head, there's music going, and I'm sort of running the scenarios. But I'm trying to learn from the situation, and too much content shuts my brain down. And I definitely know that works for my kid.
Have you said that too?
Yes.
That's cool.
And she doesn't like the way we argue. Like, because I'll just stand there and be silent for like 30 minutes while I'm formulating.
Oh, that would...
I'm formulating. But like to react in that moment for her and for my kids.
Vein on Claire's forehead?
No.
To react in that moment will not lead to what I'm looking for, which is the conversation, the lesson, or for me to learn whatever I need to learn. So predictability is...
Do you all think that it's also new how much parents are involved? I know from my upbringing to sports that I played to places I've worked, we always didn't have parents around. And so now you're seeing, especially since like post-pandemic, more parents are involved, more parents are showing up, but also that want for control is there because it's hard to let go. Could that also be a barrier for coaches or a barrier for people that run programs that you now have a wealth of parents when you're used to not having?
Absolutely.
Well, you've talked about that before. It's like at the academy, you created space for the parents to show up and have a role. Right? And you're right. We're now dealing with a situation where parents think they have a role, but it's not been defined. So they think they can actually speak on the sideline and tell their kids what to do. And it's like, you can't do that. Right? Like one voice, right? So I love how like you have created a very tailored, specific opportunity, and it's behavior specific for how kids can, or for how parents can show up for their kids. You could show up at practice, and you could stand here, right? And like we've worked with a program, I think it was called JP Soccer. Do y'all remember this? Jamaica Plain Soccer, where they were like,
I do remember.
They were like, we have an issue with either over-engaged parents or parents not showing up. And they're like, well, we got to come up with a role, right? We talk about it. Kids have a role, they'll show up. So for the parents, they had them stand around the soccer field. I was going to say court. Sorry. But they were going to like sports. They were going to stand around on the sidelines and then kick the ball back in. And there was some fears that like the parents would just kick it directly to their kid. The kid was 6. So as much as I would want to kick it to you, Armond, it's not going to happen. We're not in the same wavelength. They're 6. So what happened was like the parents remained engaged. The kids loved seeing that their parents were there watching. And the ball, as we know, 6-year-old soccer is just like, it kept it in play. So there were more touches, more smiles, more laughter, all because it was defined for how parents can be engaged. Otherwise, it's going to wild out, then you're going to see the parents yelling and
fighting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
No, you answered my question, and you also just gave me a thought of just like, I think especially having defined roles when it's a new sport, because children will always look to their parents for approval. If I'm getting this right, does it look right? Am I doing the thing? But you need time for them to actually learn away from you, because you can't be on the field with them. You can't be in the space with them. You can't actually walk them through practice while coach is going, but also, to your point, it's your first time having to relinquish control of your child to another adult, right? And you have to trust that adult, and how you show up, how you behave really tells a story of, as parents, we trust and respect this adult or not. And parents may not understand, the more disrespectful, the more outlandish, the more outspoken you are, the more you're creating a space where your kids are looking at that adult like, well, you don't know what you're talking about as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think creating a space for parents, but also having the authority as a coach to state the why, I think is what really is missing of like, hey, we don't need that on the sideline. And it comes off like I'm targeting you because you're this kid's parent, as opposed to this is the culture of how we do things. Yeah. And I think parents should have a say in the culture instead of combating it all the time.
Armond, I'm thinking right now that, because Claire, your young person, is participating in sports now. Armond, your kids are stepping into that world in the near future. What are some things that you're looking out for, in particular to your young people jumping into that experience?
My God. Like, I consider myself to be a pretty courageous person. And like,
I agree.
It makes me scared to think about putting my kids into a space where I know can be so detrimental for them.
Yeah.
Especially, it's like the way they say doctors make the worst patients.
Yeah.
I feel like as a coach here, for me personally, I will make just such a not as constructive a parent as possible, because I'm always going to be looking at the coach like,
gotcha.
Yes.
Dude.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it that way?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that will absolutely happen. And I cannot wait for y'all to have kids and like everyone here that we know, because we grew up with this content and we see it, and then we're just like, oh my God, it could be this much better, or XYZ. Yeah, totally.
So one thing I'm looking for is like a coach with awareness. One that understands like what I'm looking for in my kid, which is fun. Like she's 6 years old, my guy. Like, I'm not looking towards her collegiate future or her soccer stardom or whatever. Like, that is not the goal for me putting her in this sport. She needs to learn how her body moves. And sports was a great way for me to figure out how my body moves. She needs to figure out how to like participate in a high intensity environment with people who she may not want to participate with. Like these are so many things she can get from sport, but the coach can just ruin it.
Yeah, and I think
so. Like, that's definitely my number one. Like, coach, what are you like as my defined role as a parent? Like, coach accountability. Like, hey man, like this is what I'm seeing, or woman, this is what I'm seeing. Great or not so great.
And I think that for us having the lens that we have in regards to us knowing what we know, in regards to coaching and the brain and how all of these things and how important of an age a 6-year-old entering sports can be, it's really important to understand, like, yes, we want them to be better at soccer, basketball, whatever. Like, that's one of the goals of them coming here, but it's not the only thing I'm looking for. How can this sport experience start to transform the life of my young person, right? And what are you doing, right, as a coach? Because, again, I'm trusting you with something that's the most important and precious thing to me, right? What can you do to make that thing better, right? And I don't think a lot of coaches understand the responsibility that they are potentially taking on, and they see it as an X's and O's thing, but not the tremendous life skills that young people can get out of this, and how much of a detriment that can be as a barrier for that young person's success in that sport experience.
For like a parent to hope that not only is this going to be the pathway to whatever, but also like make them a better human, reiterate what I'm saying at home. Do you think coaches are equipped to even handle that responsibility to serve as a coach mentor?
I don't think that every coach is equipped for that, because yes, it takes courage to take on a young person, again, at the age of 6, where they're just a blank canvas. But it also takes the right amount of culture building to allow parents, and for that matter, the coach, to come and have that certain level of vulnerability where you can let a person say, hey, I know this is your style and I know this is how you want to do things, but this is what I'm looking for my kid to get out of this too. And being able to meet that parent where they are, because we always talk about meeting the kids where they are, but being able to meet that parent where they are, and as a coach, show that, okay, yeah, this matters to me, and this is how I want to do things, but at the same time, I want your voice to show. I want what you believe is right to show in my space too, because I've never told a parent that what they said didn't matter.
I don't feel comfortable having that conversation with
and
a
again,
coach.
right, and that's
so
totally
like,
fine.
so like back to your question too, it's like, how is that actually built into a program? Like, I'm not gonna, at the beginning of a season, I'm not coming up to a coach and being like, listen, this is what I'm looking for my kid.
I think that was going to be
But should I?
part of my answer is like how the program is developed and created. 100%. Is the program you are signing your kid up for, academics, life skills, a holistic approach, or is it like, we're going to win at all costs this 5 and under soccer league because we've won it every year for the last 30 years? I think going into it what you're signing up for, and I think the scary part is parents really don't pay attention, right? They go to what everybody else is doing.
Right questions.
And they may not ask the right questions. But to your point about having the conversation, I think I've seen more often than not coaches not meet parents until the first game.
Right. That's when I'm like, I found a program. Like, I think that's a win that I even found like a program where my kid can play. And then I'm like, oh, wait, right? Like, then I have to have a conversation about my kid's well-being. And that's not way past game 1.
Right. And that's what's scary to me is I've coached in neighborhoods and communities where I've had the same boys for 3-4 years on a team, and I didn't meet mom or dad or uncle or whoever until season 4. Yeah. Right? Like, nobody shows up to games. Nope. So their safety, their growth, their development, it all leaves and stays with me. And I think to your point about like reiterating what coach is doing, I've often had the inverse of I've had to coach parents so that we're not starting over from step 1 every time they go home with you. 100%. We're taking 3 steps forward, and then they go home, something happens, and they come back, and then we have to start over. To your point about repetition, I think with parents, especially newer parents, repetition is also needed because it's pretty much a traumatic experience if you don't handle it the right way of I'm letting my kid go to this program, or I'm letting my kid be in this space and I have no clue. I know school is like that. Like, for a lot of parents, the first time you drop a kid off at school, it's like, oh my God, like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna sit out the classroom. I'm gonna sit outside the classroom for another 2 hours. But with sports, you can see the practice happening, but you're not involved. But you wanna be involved because that's your nature. So I think what I would say to parents is be proactive about the adults or the humans that you're leaving your child with, or you're entrusting your child with. Meet them, ask questions, and have questions about what they do for kids, how they do for kids, how they protect children, because a coach's first responsibility is safety.
For sure, and you got to be clear on your expectations on every front, right? A lot of coaches come in and they have young people, be very transparent about what they want to get out of it. At least that's what I hope for coaches to do, right? But nobody really is going into that space and talking to parents about what do you expect your kid to get out of this, right? So again, that environment can serve those needs. And when coaches do stuff like that, or they do things like that, it takes kind of the discomfort out of having those conversations.
Yeah, because I'm listening, and I still would feel uncomfortable, like going up to a coach and being like, hello, I'm Leo's mom, and this is what I'm looking for. How are you going to help me get to this?
Yeah. Let me say that anytime a parent has actually done that, it's always been well received.
Has it?
And what I will also say is, as a coach, as a coach, I'm always willing to go if a parent ever has a question or anything like that. After every game, I bring my kids aside, and then if I see a parent who, may look a certain way or may, have had questions in the past, I'm like, hey, you were here today, like, you see something I could do better, or you see something that I may have missed, because, you have a set of eyes that I'm focused on the game, and I'm focused on what the young people need in regards to the context of us being successful to win this game. Is this something you saw that I may have done because you say a young person feels, A, B, and C about, my coaching style? What feedback can you give me?
Next level. You're self-aware. You're regulated. True. You understand, and I think there's an added storyline here. Is you've also been successful. Yeah. In quote unquote, however you want to define that, but you played college basketball, right? And I would look to you about how did you do that? And then this is what brings my next question. I'm curious what y'all say is the balance, because there's rec level where kids can just show up and play and it's joyful and lovely. And at some point a decision needs to be made where a kid needs to pick or the parent needs to now reevaluate finances to meet the kid's want and to play college basketball, right? And I would love for you to tell your story a little bit, because I remember you saying you wanted to play college ball and your mom was gonna make it happen from what she can control. And that is not an easy decision. And that is a complete reevaluation of how you're continuing your livelihood. So how do you balance showing up for your kid and making sure that they have the life skills and that they are just having fun and they know how to move their body, to also protecting their dream to play college sports, because it worked for you?
I mean, I think my mom was she held me accountable to a level that I don't think any coach had to or needed to, if that makes sense. But she also gave me a lot of grace to make my choices. And I think being able to toe that line, I think grace and accountability are two sides of a coin.
Totally. And
being able to toe both of those and know which one applies. I think my mom did a really good job at that. And so when I went into spaces to ask those questions, or if I was looking, to go to a school, I was looking for those things. Are these people gonna allow me to, have the grace to make these choices and sometimes make the wrong ones, but at the same time hold me accountable for what I'm there for? And a lot of coaches, at least in the sphere of my influence, that's one thing that I've always told them to do. And I think that's the best way that I've changed landscapes and programs that I've worked in.
Just grace and accountability balance?
Making sure that you have a balance between grace and accountability, but also making sure that you reflect that in the choices that you make for yourself. Because I think, again, basketball was easy for me at one point, but it took a lot of hard work for me to get to where I got. I'll say that. And I have to understand that I've developed what I like to call an athletic privilege, from a lack of better words. So I'm a lot more regulated than my young people are, because they haven't got to where I am. And I don't put them in a box of my experience, right? Yeah. I kind of mirror that. For me, I like to think about it as, I'm the frame in the picture, if that makes sense. Right? I'm the frame in that picture, and my job is to make sure that the picture stands out. And when you move the frame, you're still going to see the outline of what it was, but it's not about me, right? It's about me making sure that the picture is what everybody sees and making sure that that picture is the best version of itself.
Yep.
I think also one of the things that is a major miss to your point about what do you do is parents don't form community anymore in sport. There used to be parents that stick together, every team has a team mom, but nobody helps the team mom anymore. It's
I don't want to talk to other parents while I'm at the games.
But that's the problem.
I'm that person that's on my own. Sorry.
I don't think that.
I know that that's the case, but I think that's also what creates barriers of not knowing, is because Leo might be playing on a team with another 11-year-old, but that parent might have a 25-year-old, a 19-year-old. They may have been through this 2 or 3 times to where they can actually give you some game or some sound advice to help you make those decisions, or just help you stay away from people who want to get their hands on your kid before he blows up. I think parents have to be more conscious about their behavior and how they show up in those parent spaces, because one, your behavior could also limit your opportunity for your child around certain people, because parents are cliquish and people have different levels of influence, different pull, whatever the case may be. But then two, if you want your kids to be in a healthy environment through sport, why aren't the parents creating a healthy environment outside of the playing field too? So that everybody's looking out for everybody, as opposed to like, I'm gonna stay right here. You're gonna go do that. There's a lot of danger and not knowing, but I'm not going to ask questions. I'm not gonna be curious. I'm just gonna take what is and react.
I think a lot of parents, again, even though that's what we want them to do and they don't see it, I think folks think of themselves as centering the experience around themselves when they step in that way. And that's something that you shouldn't do, right? We young people sometimes, and again, we spoke about this a while ago, right? We have to be able to make certain choices for them, right? Because their brains aren't developed to make concrete choices. We as adults, like, we have to make certain choices. It is what it is, right? We can't, like, can you get dressed and wear pajamas to school and your day go great? Yes, but I'm not about to let you make certain choices that are potentially life-altering, right? So we have to understand, again, when we step in and do those things, and it's not about censoring yourself, it's about making sure you advocate for your young person. They have the resources in the way that they need to have them.
I have thoughts about the parent community.
Sure.
Because that would be great. And maybe I've done it from like a protective way where I'm like, I am most definitely, barely paying attention to the game. Leo just had a flag football game, and I'm time stamping that. And I like don't pay attention. I'm totally talking to
got a touchdown, by the way.
Other people.
Leo.
Thank you so much. Yes, he did. But I'm like either not paying attention to the game because I'm talking to other parents who I've totally made a click with because I know that they're safe and protective. And then when it comes to like another game, I want to distance myself from the parents' behavior that I will get I won't get in an argument with that parent because of the way that they are yelling at their kid. And what control do I have on their behavior?
I don't know if it's control.
Other than walk away from it, you know?
But you also have a wealth of knowledge from where you work that you could also be maybe somebody supports newer behaviors or different ways to handle things, because also, like we always talk about, coaches coached how they were coached, parents parent how they were parented. Yeah. And so if there is no new information,
like confrontation, y'all.
I know that's
she doesn't, but I'm not just speaking to you in general, but like for people in general, like if you see something that is damaging or is hurtful, the easier thing is to walk the other way, but then you still want your kid to be friends with that kid who's gonna intentionally learn that behavior and potentially be that aggressive.
It gets like sensitive though. It gets sensitive.
It's messy.
I would never feel comfortable being like,
go stay over there for the night.
Knock it off. You're parent better, you know? Like, there's no way. Even though I know from just our work that everything that we say to coaches transfers over to parents, without a doubt. And I would never do that. So instead, I sit to the side.
And it's a tough position to be put in.
Yeah, parents, it's not especially in our, like once you learn the brain, once you learn all the stuff that we talk about, you can't unsee it, you cannot unhear it. So again, I cannot wait for y'all to just like, for all of your kids to just be in 11. To see your kids, play at 11 years old. I just, it's just hard to remember in that moment, you know? So in that moment, you just go into that fight flight mode and you just protect what you can and you control what you can because that's what we say.
And I think also in the moment, right, when we see whoever playing whatever, it takes us back to that moment when we were 11, right? The lack of control we had, and that informs what we do in that situation.
Yeah. We remember that one time we were unfairly treated and we see it happen to our kid.
Without a doubt.
And we go straight into survival brain ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's important to call that out and also be intentional about trying to work that process for ourselves. And it's difficult, very difficult.
What I hope for is that teams and leagues and programs from pay to play to rec do create a very intentional space for parents. Because I do think right now it's just the Wild West. Like it is just, particularly with the NIL, with the system changing and rewarding, everything's gonna change.
Yeah.
You have our 13-year-old soccer player getting an NIL deal from Nike, right? You are gonna get now worse parents because they're seeing dollar signs and that's gonna change things. And there's no agents, there's nothing protecting these kids right now. And so we're assuming that parents are gonna be doing that on behalf of their kids. And that's an unfortunate assumption. Yeah. So we need these spaces, we need these conversations, we need we want the community, but who's doing it, who's running it, and what are we looking for and for what outcome?
Sounds like Claire Perry's about to start Japan.
No.
I think the dollar signs thing is interesting.
Yeah.
At the academy, I had one parent who, his son got in trouble a ton, and one day, like, he grabbed him by the collar and, like, dragged him to the field. He was like, this field can make you a millionaire among, like, you could change our lives. You could change everybody's life in this community. And I remember having a conversation with that dad. That dad had been to prison. He was an immigrant. He had worked for everything that he had. And it was hard for me to tell him that that's not our focus here.
Right.
And that no matter what, when your child walks out of these doors for the final time, they'll be a better human being. But so many parents are coming from spaces of spaces of trauma. And, you know, they look to sports as a way out for their kid that they can't provide or that they did not have. Yeah. So I think for me, I'm bullish on parents as somebody who's not a parent to be intentional for them and with them because you want their participation. You want them to be there to support because I also know what it feels like to not have your parents show up. Yeah. I played basketball my entire life. My dad has seen one game and I got ejected from it because I was upset he was there. My mom has seen a quarter of basketball that I played. So if it wasn't important to them, why would it be important to me, right? So you need the parents there. You need them to reinforce what you have going on, but you have to be intentional and tell them the how and the why that they need to do it a certain way. Yeah. And honestly, you'll weed out. Like some parents like, I'm taking my kid because I don't have control or autonomy over their experience, and that's fine. Yeah. Because it's not the culture that you're trying to build. So if you're a coach out there and you're trying to figure out how to get these parents from acting crazy or being aggressive to, you know, being supportive, you have to set a space around how you engage with them, a consistency with how you talk to them. Because the other part is, and you've probably seen this, there are certain people who have the coach's phone number. Well, I can text him now, right? And there's certain people, I haven't had a conversation with Coach once. Yeah. He barely knows my kid's name. He definitely doesn't know my name. Yeah. And so that's on the coach to be more intentional. That's on the coach to create the community around these young people.
It's a lot of pressure, though. It goes back to, like, we're asking a lot of coaches
got to do more.
Yes.
If we want to see the change that we want to see.
But coaches can do more if you have more adults and parents who are bought into what you're doing. You do that hard work up front, they got your back on the long end. And I've told plenty of stories about parents chiming in, stepping up at the academy, and also not only for their kids, but other kids who their parents weren't around or families couldn't make it because they had to work. You have to build a community around parents if you want to be successful and have some support, because you might be out there by yourself. And not every coach has 2 or 3 coaches or support. Right. You know, we talk about Boys and Girls Clubs. They don't have money or options to bring in more people. But if certain parents are off work and they have the time and energy to show up and, hey, how can I help? That goes a long way because you can count on that person.
Be prepared for that then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to create it.
Yeah. Great. If you could do that for all programs and teams.
I'm open for business. So
yeah. Okay, great.
Y'all got my email. You hit me up, find us. Yeah. I definitely can create some intentionality around parents because I think it's needed and it's also necessary for your children to see it. Yeah. Because if your children see you all getting along, they get along.
And to Claire's point about predictability for my kids, that's my #1 goal. If I want them to follow all my emotional regulation strategies that I give them, I damn sure better do it in the crisis moment.
Without a doubt. And apologize when it does.
Papa's bad.
My bad.
Papa's bad.
Vulnerability precedes trust. Yeah.
And I also think one of the other things with parents is not having a guide or a go-to to ask questions. To your point about like rec versus like travel, or you know,
what's good
the
for
next
my
thing,
kid.
or even you're gonna get into this in the next couple of years of if he wants to play high school ball. What high school do you send him to, right? Like
it's starting now.
I know. That's what I said. The next couple of years, he's not going to high school for another few. But that conversation, that lens is starting now, and not every parent has a community. Not every parent knows what's going on. And if you're a single first-time parent, you're in a new city, you're in a new neighborhood, you're in a new community.
Yeah, there's a reason why Leo plays basketball.
Yeah,
I could I was new to the city. I am a single mom. I know nothing other than sport. Right? And specifically basketball. There is a reason why, because I can control that and I can speak with him to that. But it's a nightmare out there trying to figure out, let alone where to go to high school, but what team to play for, what team will then get to this level of, and are the kids ranked? And it's like, you can get caught up in it.
For sure.
Right? And you're then traveling all over the world, all over the country, because you think that's what you're supposed to do. And
they told you that was the pathway.
They told you, well, it was my pathway. Mm-hmm. It was Anthony's pathway. Yeah. It was actually a lot of our pathways here, and it worked. And oftentimes parents will come up to me when I was coaching, how did you do that? Mm-hmm. Right? And it's like, well, I fed the system, right? We paid a bunch of money every weekend, or my parents did, right? And we did what the system said to do, but the system is wrong. The system is broken, or the system is working exactly how it's defined, and that is not okay. So I love the idea of like establishing defined behaviors and like getting the buy-in from the parents from the beginning, from the program side, and then from the ref side, from the league side, from the rules side.
And I want to point out, if you're a parent and you're trying to figure out sports or how to help a kid or what your role can be, we actually have a resource. It's our Nothing Heals Like Sport playbook. It's for coaches, but it also reads very well for parents who don't really understand the role of a coach or what a coach can do or how you can help your young person through tough times and through growth in sport. Yeah. So, it's on our website. Please check it out if you're a parent who's trying to figure out this sports landscape, whatever city you're in. I know it's very difficult, but also there is help. And we're here to help. CHJS is here to help for sure. And, take it from this conversation. These are two parents who've been doing this work for over a decade who are still navigating and trying to figure out how to do things the right way. It's not easy. And for those coaches out there who are trying to figure out how to work with parents, control the chaos, you got to be intentional. You have to take the first step. You have to build something that you want it to look like and be okay with parents and kids maybe leaving your program because they're not willing to buy into your culture.
Knowing that hopefully where they go, the number of those opportunities are going to go away, right? Like you said, they're going to go find somewhere else. Hopefully more programs will be building parent engagement and community so that there's lesser programs that are going to be like, oh, I can go there,
for sure.
So let's build this parent community.
Build this parent community.
Yeah.
And with that, we'd like to thank you for joining this episode of Coaching While Black. We'd like to thank Claire for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And always will be an indispensable resource for us at the CHJS.
Sure.
And thanks to my fellow brothers here, Chris and Anthony, for always their expertise. And come back again and see us.
Peace.
Close it out.